Welcome to the NoDQ Round Table. In this series, members of the NoDQ panel will give their answers to a wrestling question submitted by one of their colleagues. Let us now take a look at what today's question is. Several years ago, I put out a poll on NoDQ.com. Who was the most overrated professional wrestler in history? Hulk Hogan won the poll. Thus, my question to the NoDQ panel, is Hulk Hogan, in fact, the most overrated professional wrestler in history?
For me, I feel like this is a very tricky question.
I do think Hulk Hogan is very overrated.
Hulk Hogan, the most overrated professional wrestler in history. Absolutely.
Now, I would say no.
My answer is no, he is not.
I think overrated means you've been praised too highly or valued more than your place in history. And I don't think there's any doubting Hulk Hogan's place in history.
Hulk Hogan, he resonated with a lot of people that made them lifelong fans, and I say for that reason, I cannot say Hogan is overrated.
I'm gonna say that as far as a professional wrestler, yes, he gets a little too overhyped. Now, as far as a superstar, a money-making machine, no. Hogan will go down, and again, regardless of how you feel, he's going to go down as perhaps the greatest ever when it comes to marketing, when it comes to merchandise sales, when it comes to ticket numbers, ratings, stadium shows, all that. Hogan is number one. Right behind him is Stone Cold, and right behind him is John Cena.
I wouldn't consider Hulk Hogan necessarily the most overrated professional wrestler, considering we've had different generations of wrestlers held in a regard higher than need be. He definitely is one of those that might be the most influential, considering how much he influenced the entire world wrestling landscape. But I don't think I would call him necessarily the most overrated, but maybe the most recognized and probably the most infamous.
Yeah, there was Hulkamania, and he definitely helped out during the early 80s, early 90s, brought in WrestleMania with Vince and stuff like that. But I just think his in-ring work wasn't all that great.
And, when you talk about his wrestling acumen, I guess, his actual in-ring technique, watch his stuff from Japan. That proves that he's not overrated on that front. So I guess my answer is no. He's not the most overrated in history.
I think working the crowd with moves and taunts is kind of what pro wrestling is all about.
He was good at his job. He did his job well as a character. But as far as pro wrestling, like wrestling, fighting, no. I'm sorry, he was a little overrated.
At the apex of Hulkamania, we had never seen anything like him before. And he was doing things and breaking barriers that a lot of people probably thought was never going to happen.
Wrestling in general is something that resonates with all of us for different reasons, but that's the point, is it resonates. When you think of the 1980s, and I'm a 1990s kid, I grew up Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, those are my two guys, but the same way that they resonate with me is quite frankly probably the same reason that Hulk Hogan resonates with a lot of you that grew up in the 80s out there. This is a guy that revolutionized professional wrestling. There's a reason why Hulk Hogan is on the Mount Rushmore for many wrestling fans, because he took the business to a whole level and made a lot of fans lifelong fans, just like Stone Cold and Rock made me lifelong fans. And sometimes when you think about what resonates with you growing up as something, you look back on what Hogan did for a lot of those kids back in the 80s that are still fans now. It's something where it's basically like, yeah, it goes deeper than just how technically good they were in the ring.
But if you're just looking at impact on the business, I don't think you can have Hulk Hogan in the category of overrated, because without Hulk Hogan, there's no Stone Cold Steve Austin, there's no The Rock, there's no John Cena.
There is no Stone Cold if Hulk Hogan didn't do what he did in the 1980s. So no, I don't think he's overrated. I think he's rated just right.
Hands down, absolutely. People want to talk about how Cena's overrated or The Rock's overrated or blah, 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 blah. No, Hogan. Hogan is still the most overrated dude and is still out there being a douchebag.
I understand he's not the greatest worker in wrestling history, and I understand he's done very bad things in and out of the ring and behind the scenes. However, he has brought wrestling to a big point, including the 80s with the rock and wrestling era. A lot of classic stories such as him versus Andre the Giant, the Mega Powers Explode. That was a fantastic feud. Heck, him and Ultimate Warrior, that was a shining point of that golden era of pro wrestling from the WWF. And then, of course, we can't forget the NWO. That was huge.
He isn't the best technical wrestler, but that more goes into being a wrestler than just being a good technician. Their history is filled with amazing in-ring technicians that couldn't do anything, couldn't get over, didn't have the good mic skills. Hogan was able to do all of those things in a time and as a character that it needed to be.
But as far as a professional wrestler, yes, because that wasn't his job to give you 10-star matches with his technical wrestling. He was a act, he was a character, he was a gimmick. And again, perhaps the greatest.
Without him, I don't think that, wrestling would have gotten as popular as it did through the mid to late 90s. That was definitely a needed moment in wrestling.
Hulk Hogan really kicked down a lot of those doors for the professional wrestling business as we know it today.
That concludes this edition of the NoDQ Round Table. What were your thoughts on the question? Leave a comment and subscribe to the NoDQ YouTube channel for the latest wrestling news and discussion.